Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, August 8th, 2024. There will be at least one debate between former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, and Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee. Donald Trump proposed 3 debates in September on 3 networks today, including on ABC on September 10th, which the vice president had previously agreed to. Donald Trump made the pitch during an hour-long news conference. He was asked as well about the size of the crowds the vice president and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, have been drawing this week. He began his response with, "Oh, give me a break." Vice President Harris and Governor Walz campaigned today at an autoworkers union hall in Wayne, Michigan. State Department says the Biden administration is in touch with the Austrian government about a disrupted terror plot to attack a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna. Today is the anniversary of the deadly wildfires in Maui, Hawaii. Governor Josh Green speaks at the opening of a temporary housing project on the island. California Governor Gavin Newsom and China's ambassador to the U.S. attend the opening of the new giant panda habitat at the San Diego Zoo. And President Joe Biden welcomes the World Series champion Texas Rangers to the White House. Associated Press reporting from Palm Beach, Florida, ABC says both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have agreed to a September 10th presidential debate, setting up a face-off between the Republican and Democratic nominees. The announcement Thursday came shortly after Trump told a news conference that he had proposed 3 presidential debates with 3 television networks, saying he agreed on certain dates in September. Trump is rejoining the ABC debate days after posting on his social media network that he would not appear on the network, citing a lawsuit he had filed. His decision sets up a highly anticipated moment in an election where the first debate led to a massive change in the race, with Democratic President Joe Biden ending his re-election bid and endorsing Harris. That was from Associated Press. Here is that minute from the news conference with Donald Trump at his private club, Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, Florida.
With all of that being said, I think it's very important to have debates, and we've agreed with Fox on a date of September 4th. We've agreed with NBC, fairly full agreement subject to them, on September 10th, and we've agreed with ABC on September 25th. So we have those 3 dates, and those networks, they're very anxiously awaiting that date and those dates. So we have September 4th, September 10th, and September 25th. We have spoken to the heads of the network, and it's all been confirmed, other than some fairly minor details. Audience, some location, which city would we put it into, but all things that will be settled very easily. I think it'll be very easy. The other side has to agree to the terms. They may or may not agree. I don't know if they're going to agree. She hasn't done an interview. She can't do an interview. She's barely competent, and she can't do an interview. But I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight.
Former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, at a news conference at his Mar-a-Lago club and home in Palm Beach, Florida. NBC News reports that Vice President Kamala Harris said this afternoon that she's looking forward to debating Trump next month. "I'm looking forward to debating Donald Trump, and we have a date of September 10th, she said in response to a question from NBC News. "I hear he's finally committed to it, and I'm looking forward to it." Harris did not respond when asked about the other 2 proposed presidential debates for September. Trump said today at his news conference that he would be open to debating Harris 3 times next month. That was from NBC News. The Cook Political Report this morning updated its predictions on 3 battleground states in the presidential race, posting on X, "Today we're making 3 changes to our Electoral College ratings. Arizona, lean Republican to toss-up. Nevada, lean Republican to toss-up. Georgia, lean Republican to toss-up." Reporter asked Donald Trump at his news conference today about the number of supporters who have been attending the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz campaign rallies this week.
Are you worried at all about the size of Harris's crowds?
Oh, give me a break. Listen, I had 107,000 people in New Jersey. You didn't report it. I'm so glad you asked. What did she have yesterday? 2,000 people? If I ever had 2,000 people, you'd say my campaign is finished. It's so dishonest, the press. And here's a great example. I had in Michigan recently 25,000 people, and 25,000 people we just couldn't get them in. We had in Harrisburg, 25,000 people, and 20,000 people couldn't get in. We had so many, nobody ever mentions that. When she gets 1,500 people, and I saw it yesterday on ABC, which they said, oh, the crowd was so big. I have 10 times, 20 times, 30 times the crowd size, and no, they never say the crowd was big. That's why I'm always saying turn around the cameras. I'm so glad you asked that. I think it's so terrible when you say, well, she has 1,500 people, 1,000 people, and they talk about, oh, the enthusiasm. Let me tell you, we have the enthusiasm. The Republican Party, and me as a candidate, but the Republican Party has the enthusiasm because people want to see crime stopped. They want to see a country that's respected. Think of it. If I were president, you wouldn't have Russia and Ukraine. Would have never happened. Zero chance. You wouldn't have had October 7th of Israel. You wouldn't have the horrible withdrawal. And I don't mean the withdrawal, because the withdrawal was fine. I was ready to withdraw from Afghanistan, and we were going to do it with dignity and strength. And we were keeping our equipment. We weren't leaving $85 billion worth of equipment behind. And we wouldn't have had 13 great soldiers. I know the families of those soldiers well. We wouldn't have had these soldiers killed. And we wouldn't have had 45 soldiers obliterated. No legs, no arms, the face. None of that would have happened. And you wouldn't have had inflation. You wouldn't have had any inflation, because inflation was caused by their bad energy problems. Now they've gone back to the Trump thing because they need the votes. I don't know if you know, they're drilling now because they had to go back because gasoline was going up to $7, $8, $9 a barrel. So they said, we better do what Trump. But the day after the election, if they won, you're going to have fuel prices go through the roof. Everybody's going to be forced to buy an electric car, which they're not going to do because they don't want that. It's got a great market. It's got a market. It's really a sub-market. People want gasoline-propelled cars. They want hybrids. They want to have everything, and they want electric. But they want everybody to have an electric car. We don't have enough electricity. We couldn't make enough electricity for that. And you know what else? The weight of a car, the weight of a truck. They want all trucks to be electric. Little things that a lot of people don't talk about. The weight of a truck is 2.5 times heavier. You would have to rebuild every bridge in this country if you were going to do this ridiculous policy. So, but on crowd size, in history, for any country, nobody's had crowds like I have, and you know that. And when she gets 1,000 people and everybody starts jumping, you know that if I had 1,000 people would say, that's the end of his campaign. I have hundreds of thousands of people. In South Carolina, I had 88,000 people. In Alabama, I had 68,000 people. Nobody says about crowd size with me. But she has 1,000 people or 1,500 people, and they say, oh, the enthusiasm's back. No. The enthusiasm is with me and the Republican Party because they want to stop crime. They want to stop people from pouring into our country from places unknown and from countries unknown, from countries that nobody ever heard of. That's where the enthusiasm is.
Former President Donald Trump, Republican presidential nominee, at a news conference at Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, Florida. Vice President Harris's campaign said there were 14,000 people at the rally in Philadelphia on Tuesday and 15,000 in Detroit last night. Donald Trump held a wide-ranging news conference that ran a little over an hour. We covered it live on the C-SPAN networks, and the video is at cspan.org. He was asked about the economy, abortion, immigration, U.S. relations with China, gun control, marijuana legalization, and more. Washington Post, doing live updates, has this paragraph as well. Donald Trump has repeatedly questioned Vice President Harris's intelligence in this news conference. He has said she's not as smart as President Joe Biden, and that in terms of intelligence, Hillary was far superior. He also claimed Harris couldn't pass the bar exam. Harris didn't pass her bar exam the first time, but was admitted to the State Bar of California in 1990. That was from the Washington Post. Both of the Democratic presidential ticket candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris and Vice Presidential running mate Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, and Republican vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, had planned campaign events today in North Carolina, but those were postponed due to severe weather expected from Tropical Storm Debbie. The vice president and governor instead stayed in Michigan and went to the United Auto Workers Union Hall Local 900 in Wayne. It represents Ford's Michigan assembly plant. UAW has endorsed the Democratic presidential ticket. Here's Vice President Harris.
You know why I fought my entire career for unions and labor? Because I understand the concept and the noble concept behind collective bargaining. And here it is. Here it is. Fairness. Yeah. Fairness. It's about saying, hey, in a negotiation, don't we all believe the outcome should be fair? I mean, who could disagree with that? The outcome should be fair. It should be fair, right? But when you're talking about the individual and a big company, and you're requiring that one individual to negotiate against a big company, how's that outcome going to be fair? So collective bargaining is about saying, let the collective come together around a common experience, which at its core is about dignity and the dignity of labor. That's right. And then let the people come together to negotiate so you make the balance. And then the outcome will be fair. And isn't that what we're talking about in this here election? We're saying we just want fairness. We want dignity for all people. We want to recognize the right all people have to freedom and liberty to make choices, especially those that are about heart and home, and not have their government telling them what to do. Our campaign is about saying we trust the people. We see the people. We know the people. You know, one of the things I love about our country? We are a nation of people who believe in those ideals that were foundational to what made us so special as a nation. We believe in those ideals. And the sisters and brothers of labor have always fought for those ideals. Always fought for those ideals. And we know we are a work in progress. We haven't yet quite reached all of those ideals, but we will die trying because we love our country and we believe in who we are.
Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, joined by vice presidential running mate Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota at a UAW Union Hall in Wayne, Michigan. Also there, the UAW president, Shawn Fain. The UAW has endorsed the Democratic presidential ticket. Friday, Vice President Harris and Governor Walz will be going to another state with close presidential polling, so-called battleground states. Arizona, holding a rally in Phoenix, and then Saturday they'll be in Las Vegas, Nevada. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, says she has never been that impressed with President Biden's political operation. She made the comment on the New Yorker Radio Hour podcast with editor David Remnick after he asked about her appearance on MSNBC's Morning Joe, which, as an article at The Hill put it, was notable for its lack of confidence in President Biden staying in the presidential race and a major turning point at the time, as Biden sought to argue to his party that they should stick with him through another campaign.
I didn't plan to do that on the show.
It was improvised.
In fact, if I did, I probably would have worn a different suit or something because I didn't look too professional. But seriously, just a little background.
It was like
I've never been
pain.
that impressed with his political operation.
Biden's operation.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I just haven't been. They won the White House. Bravo. Right? Mm-hmm. So my concern was, this ain't happening. And we have to make a decision for this to happen. And the president has to make the decision for that to happen.
House Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, on the New Yorker Radio Hour podcast. She's been promoting her new book, The Art of Power, My Story as America's First Woman Speaker of the House. This is Washington Today. Story from ABC News. Bomb-making materials were found in the home of one of two people suspected of planning a terror attack on upcoming Taylor Swift concerts in Vienna, authorities said Thursday, adding that both suspects appeared to be inspired by the Islamic State group and al-Qaeda. The main suspect, a 19-year-old Austrian citizen, fully confessed to attack plans during an interrogation, according to the head of Austria's Directorate of State Security and Intelligence. Swift had concerts scheduled for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Vienna. The Vienna shows were expected to draw 65,000 concert goers per day, with additional 10 to 15,000 fans outside the area, police said. Some of the reporting from ABC News. This came up at today's U.S. State Department briefing with spokesperson Matthew Miller.
On the foiling of an apparent ISIS terror plot targeting a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna, did the State Department have visibility in advance of that plot? So it might happen?
So I will say that we are in touch with the Austrian government about this. They've said it's an ongoing investigation, so I will leave it to them to speak to the details of that investigation. Obviously, the safety and security of Americans overseas is our #1 priority. We have been in contact with the Austrian government about this matter. As a general case, we do share information with our allies and partners about terrorism activities, just as they share information with us. That's not to speak to this specific case, but just as a general practice that we always try to work with our allies and partners about information that we may have that's of concern or that they may have that's concern to us, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, and publicly reported that the plot was disrupted on the basis of U.S. intelligence that was conveyed to the Austrian authorities. So I'm just curious whether the department was also apprised of that kind of intelligence, given so many U.S. citizens might have been put at risk.
So I certainly wouldn't want to speak to or confirm any kind of intelligence information. We have been, and when I say we, the broader United States government has been in touch with the Austrian government. The State Department has been in touch with the Austrian government. And I think it's important to say one other thing about this, which is we do commend the very swift action that they took to disrupt what could have quite obviously been a very serious incident.
Ahead of the tragic attacks at Crocus Hall in Russia, the State Department did issue a security alert to U.S. citizens to avoid large gatherings for 48 hours. I guess it's contingent on the question you haven't answered, which is whether you knew that this was a possibility, why an advisory, a similar advisory, wouldn't have been made in this case.
So obviously I can't really speak to that without getting into the underlying details, which I very much can't do. I will say that we take very seriously our duty to warn American citizens about threats to their safety and security overseas. And when we have information that we need to get in their hands, we get it in their hands as soon as possible. There are times when intervening events take place that make it unnecessary to send that type of information publicly, but when we need to, we very much do.
The State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller at his news conference at the State Department in Washington. He also answered questions about the situation in the Middle East. New York Times reports that Israel's Security Cabinet will convene on Thursday night to discuss preparations for the widely anticipated retaliation for the killing of two leaders of the Iran-backed group Hezbollah and Hamas, Israeli officials said, as the country's leaders have publicly vowed they are ready for anything. Speculation over how Iran and Hezbollah might respond has kept the region on edge for days, with all sides issuing threats that have raised the specter of a wider war and diplomats across the Middle East and elsewhere scrambling to tamp down the tensions. That was the article from the New York Times. Here again is Matthew Miller at the State Department.
Does the U.S. have any indications from its diplomatic conversations that Iran is rethinking any part of the need to retaliate for the strike on Vienna?
So two things to that. One, I'm not going to speak to our private diplomatic conversations. I'm certainly not going to speak to what Iran may or may not be planning, other than to say, as we've said for several days now, and it's been the focus of our diplomatic engagements, is we continue to make clear to Iran that they should not escalate this conflict, they should not take any further escalatory steps, that those steps are not in their interests, they're not in the interests of the wider region, and that is a point we will continue to impress in all of our diplomatic engagements in the region.
You've also stressed the need or the help that a ceasefire deal would provide in lowering tensions. Is it clear to the U.S. how persuasive the prospect of a ceasefire deal is to the Iranians? Is the appeal of a deal greater than the need to retaliate?
So, again, I don't want to speak for the Iranians or try to make an assessment about what is convincing to the Iranians or what is compelling to them or what's going to go into their mind when they make their decisions. I will say that there are two sides of this coin. on one side of the coin, yes, we believe that a ceasefire would go a long way towards alleviating tensions in the region. It would obviously have immediate benefits for the Palestinian people in Gaza. It would have immediate benefits for the hostages and their families. But we think it would allow us to make progress in the diplomatic endeavors we have been pursuing to bring calm along the Israel-Lebanon border, and it would allow us to ease broader regional tensions. On the other side of that coin, certainly any further escalation just makes all of the region's problems more difficult. And one of the problems that we're addressing is the conflict in Gaza and trying to reach a ceasefire. So it is true that anytime you have an increase in tensions, it makes all of our diplomatic efforts more difficult. So I would hope that that's something that Iran is paying attention to and something that they're cognizant of, and they wouldn't want to do anything to hurt prospects for a ceasefire. They wouldn't want to do anything to further raise regional tensions and raise the risk of this conflict spiraling out of control, but we can't speak for them.
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, part of his news conference at the State Department in Washington. The United States Central Command, begins an article at Times of Israel, announces that U.S. Air Force F-22 fighter jets arrived in CENTCOM area's responsibility today as part of the U.S. force posture changes in the region and to address threats posed by Iran and Iranian-backed groups. The U.S. has been deploying fighter jets and other assets to the Middle East as tensions are high amid an anticipated Iranian and Hezbollah attack on Israel. That was from the Times of Israel article. A rocket attack on al-Assad Air Base, Iraq, earlier this week injured U.S. service members and U.S. contractors. And the Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary, Sabrina Singh, was asked by a reporter at her news conference about that incident.
On the attack at al-Assad earlier this week, how many U.S. service members were injured total? I believe we got 7 service members and contractors were injured, but has that number gone up since? And how many have returned to duty? How many are still seeking treatment?
Yeah, no, thanks, Liz, for the question. So initially, our assessment was that it was 7 personnel that were injured. That was our initial report. It is actually 5 service members that were injured in the attack. After conducting a post-strike analysis, we determined that 4 service members and 1 contractor was actually injured in the attack. The other 2 received, very minor injuries and returned to duty right away. And again, it was 2 personnel initially thought to have been injured during the attack, but were screened by medics, and after that attack were immediately returned to duty. In terms of the status of the other personnel, 3 of the 5 injured personnel have been transferred to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany for additional treatment. The remaining personnel, the one service member and contractor, have returned to duty and are in the region.
And can you explain what exactly happened? Was it 2 rockets that impacted the base? Or, how was this able to get past the U.S. protective?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it was 2 rockets launched by what we believe to be an Iranian-backed Shia militia group that impacted al-Assad Air Base in Iraq. There was a 3rd rocket that was intercepted before it impacted the base. In terms of how these rockets got through, look, that's something that CENTCOM is going to review and is reviewing right now. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And so CENTCOM is going to adjust and take the proper measures needed to protect our forces in the region. But I don't have more to share right now.
The Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh at the Pentagon News Conference today. Article from Reuters. Israel on Thursday revoked the accreditation of 8 Norwegian diplomats working as representatives to the Palestinian Authority, drawing a sharp response from Norway's foreign minister, who called it an extreme act. Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz said the decision to revoke the diplomat status was made in response to what he described as Norway's anti-Israel conduct, including its recognition of a Palestinian state. U.S. Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff announced today that the U.S. would give the United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO, $2.2 million to fight anti-Semitism. Doug Emhoff met with the head of UNESCO in Paris, where the agency is headquartered.
Last year, when the United States rejoined UNESCO, we reaffirmed our commitment to leadership and cooperation in education, science, culture, and communication. UNESCO plays a vital role in ensuring that Holocaust education is taught and used to combat anti-Semitism all around the world. And in the wake of the horrific October 7th Hamas terrorist attack against Israel, where hostages were taken. This work has never been more urgent. Holocaust education improves understanding of the dangerous consequences of hate. It promotes tolerance, respect for diversity, and human rights. Holocaust education also encourages empathy and compassion by highlighting, as I mentioned, the resilience of the survivors, the human stories. And this is going to allow us to foster a more compassionate and just world. So today, I am proud to announce some of the progress that we have made to promote this Holocaust education. The Biden-Harris administration is working with Congress to support a $2.2 million grant for UNESCO's international program on Holocaust and genocide education. Once completed, this funding will help UNESCO promote accurate Holocaust education, counter hate, and advance the United States priorities amid this dramatic surge in anti-Semitism. As I mentioned, it's a crisis, and the Holocaust denial that unfortunately still persists around the world today. In addition, for several weeks next year, the United States will provide UNESCO with a Fulbright specialist who is an expert in the field of Holocaust education. This is a big deal. Another important signal of our commitment to providing tangible support to UNESCO's Holocaust education efforts.
Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff at a UNESCO roundtable today in Paris. He's also in that city leading the U.S. delegation for the closing ceremony of the Summer Olympics this weekend. The delegation includes Senator LaFonza Butler and Congressman Robert Garcia, both Democrats of California. From AP, Russian troops are battling to push back Ukrainian forces from the Kursk region on the third day of one of the largest cross-border incursions of the war, the Russian Defense Ministry said Thursday. A ministry statement said the Russian military and border guards have blocked Ukrainian forces from pushing deeper into the region in southwestern Russia. It added that the army is attacking Ukrainian fighters trying to advance into the area from Ukraine's Sumy region. Kyiv has not commented on the incursion. In a video address to the nation late Thursday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky did not mention the fighting in the Kursk region, but emphasized that Russia brought the war to our land and it should feel what it has done. That was from Associated Press. U.S. Army General Christopher Cavoli, commander of U.S. European Command and Supreme Allied Commander Europe, spoke today about the lessons learned from the Russia-Ukraine war.
Another important thing that comes out of this is speed. And I don't think I'm talking here about speed of tactical execution or anything like that. I'm talking about the speed with which we can replenish a force or we can expand a force. These, again, are things we haven't had to think too much about, but if you remember my initial comments about scale and losses, so the Russians have lost over 2,500 tanks, main battle tanks in this war, and they've replaced them, which is interesting because most major countries only have a couple of hundred tanks in their entire inventory. Major NATO allies have 200 or fewer tanks in their total inventory. So the speed with which we can do things, with which we can build things, is very, very important. Some of the things we have that we depend on so much in the U.S. military right now have extremely long production timelines, 2 and 3 years for certain missiles and things like that. Some of this has to do with their complexity. This isn't just as simple as telling, Ford that they needed to start building airplanes during the Second World War. These are, because an airplane and an automobile may have been somewhat similar during that period, but there are qualitative differences between simple machinery and an F-35 right now, for example. It requires a specialized workforce to build it. So it's hard to build the exquisite stuff fast, which has to do with the cost, which has to do with the numbers. So I find all of these comments so far to be related. Finally, something that's remarkable about this war is the rate of adaptation that we see on both sides. Tactical, operational, but also technical. The the shelf life of a given technology is pretty short. It's pretty easy to develop a new idea, turn it into a technology, put it on the battlefield, find it countered, and then have to adapt to the enemy's adaptation, and so on in a cycle. That means there's got to be a mentality and a capability and a system to adapt things quickly and then to spread that adaptation across the force. I think it's safe to say that super complex systems of high cost are much harder to adapt on a wide scale basis, especially at the point of use, than simpler systems.
Army General Christopher Cavoli, Commander, U.S. European Command and Supreme Allied Commander, at today's Emerging Technologies Conference hosted by the National Defense Industrial Association in Washington. And Washington Today continues in a moment.
We need your help to reach our $25,000 summer fundraising goal. A generous donor will match every dollar you give, doubling your impact. I'm Paul at C-SPAN, and your support keeps the unfiltered access you rely on, allowing you to think for yourself. Donate now at cspan.org/donate and make twice the difference. Every amount helps. Thank you for your support. Double your donation at cspan.org/donate.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast wherever you find your podcasts and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Today is the anniversary of the 2023 wildfires on Maui, Hawaii that killed 102 people and caused over $5 billion in damage. President Biden with a statement, "The people of Maui will always remain in my heart and prayers. Together, we've made real progress. The voices of those who have called the island home for generations will continue to guide the work ahead as we remain focused on supporting their ongoing recovery." White House says that the president spoke by phone with Hawaii's Governor Josh Green and the Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson. Governor Green on Wednesday spoke at a temporary housing development on Maui where the first families were moving in.
It has been an incredible challenge for so many families. Over 3,000 families lost homes on the day of the fire 1 year ago tomorrow. So it's been 365 full days since the fire hit Maui. So we want to highlight just some of the efforts and mahalo people today. We're grateful to see you. We're grateful to see you in good health. We wanted to be a part of this small blessing with you at Laiku because it is about rebuilding. And for the many, many families, we have to somehow find a way to get back. In this year, we hope that this will become a calming space for you. For anyone who feels a need, we hope they'll reach out. You have a beautiful family, so thank you for sharing them with us today. We're going to continue to focus our work between the mayor's team and CNHA, all of our departments. We're going to continue to make sure we build homes. This is just the absolute beginning, and I think everyone needs to know they will see houses now here in the second year of the recovery. The first year was about survival. The second year will be about rebuilding, and there will be thousands of homes built now. These houses are some of the first houses that are built. So we're grateful to see you here. We want to see everyone heal, and we know it's going to take so much time. The first two families began moving into Laiku on July 23rd, and two more families, as we see, are moving in right now. The additional units will come in August, throughout this month, and in September. I just really want to profoundly thank Mayor Bisson, who has worked day and night to try to find ways to help us recover. We have been grateful to see each step of the recovery, and we know it's slow, but we want to do all that we can, essentially faster than anyone else has done in other places where such tragedies have occurred. So you have our commitment, whether it's Ed Sniffen, our director, Kuhio, who's had a heart of gold, Mike Akane at the Hawaii Community Foundation, who's been fundraising and making sure that projects can come to fruition. We just want you to know that we'll do all that we can.
Hawaii Governor Josh Green, a Democrat on Maui on Wednesday before today's first anniversary of those wildfires. Biden administration says there has been nearly $3 billion so far in federal support for response, recovery, and rebuilding efforts. On Wall Street today, the Dow up 683, NASDAQ up 464, S&P up 119. Fox Business reports the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits rose less than expected last week, potentially easing some concern about the health of the labor market following the disappointing July jobs report. Figures released Thursday by the Labor Department show initial claims for the week ending August 3rd fell by 17,000 to 233,000. San Diego, Fox 5 KUSI reports it's officially Panda Day in California, with the San Diego Zoo finally revealing two giant pandas in a historic moment of diplomacy between the U.S. and China. Yu Chuan and Xing Bao arrived from the East Asian nation in June, marking the first time a Chinese panda has been sent to the U.S. in over a decade. Since then, the panda pair have been acclimating to their new home in a private habitat known as Panda Ridge. That was from Fox 5 in San Diego. And at the exhibit opening ceremony today, California Governor Gavin Newsom.
This is about exchange. This is about understanding. This is about something much deeper, much richer than just the two beautiful pandas we celebrate. It's about celebrating our common humanity. It's about celebrating the things that bind us together. And we're living in a world the last number of years full of stress and anxiety, full of division, where people are exploiting our differences and not focusing on the things that bind us together. And so for me, this spirit, the pride that is associated with this opening today, with the experience that so many will have that we just had at Panda Ridge, is about a deeper meaning. That we not only share the same short moment in life, but the world is too small and our time is too limited to win fleeting victories at other people's expenses. We've got to triumph together. And so in that spirit, Mr. Ambassador, it's in that spirit of an open hand, not a closed fist. It's in that spirit of cooperation. It's that spirit that I'm here, proud to all of you, for all the hard work, to the trustees, Paul and his team, to the mayor, to the pro tem and her extraordinary work to get these pandas back here in San Diego. And I'm here in this spirit, again, to say this. You know, I think about this all the time in politics. You can't legislate pride. There's no bill you can sign. You can't legislate spirit. It manifests. And it manifests in moments like this. So I hope we can lift that up. I hope we can appreciate and embrace that at a moment like this, because we deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve these moments. And we deserve to see the faces of our kids. To see, you know, an 8-year-old that you're interviewing when you say, did you know the pandas are coming back? And she lights up and she gets teary-eyed. That's what it's about.
California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, at the San Diego Zoo at today's opening ceremony of the new panda exhibit and the welcome of the two new pandas just sent from China. Also at the ceremony, the Chinese ambassador to the U.S., Xie Fang.
The story of our Panda Conservation Cooperation is also a most vivid example of our two peoples reaching out to each other. Even before the establishment of diplomatic ties, China had sent the first pair of pandas to the U.S. with the ice-breaking trip by President Nixon, inspiring in many Americans a strong interest in China. A panda a day keeps the sorrow away. The iPanda channel opened by the China Conservation and Research Center for the giant panda on YouTube, which offers 24/7 non-stop live streams, has over 27 million followers. I have also heard that some American friends travel to China annually to visit the pandas who have returned from the U.S. and proudly call themselves panda nannies. Seeing is believing. China now offers a 72 or 142-hour visa-free transit policy to citizens from 54 countries, including the United States, leading to a wave of China travel. Many foreign friends have seized the opportunity to experience an open, safe, vibrant, welcoming, and dynamic China. They visited pandas and enjoyed hot pot in Sichuan, rode the futuristic metro in the cyberpunk city Chongqing, tried to have food delivered by drones in Shenzhen, and hailed a self-driving taxi in Wuhan. Many marveled in their videos that this is a China they never expected. A comment under one of these videos said, "China isn't our enemy. We share the planet and we need to learn how to do it peacefully as co-citizens." China will continue to embrace the world with open arms and roll out more measures to facilitate people-to-people exchanges.
The Chinese ambassador to the United States, Xie Fang, at the San Diego Zoo during the opening ceremony today, welcoming the two new giant pandas to their new habitat called Panda Ridge. Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. reports that in May it was announced that two new giant pandas will be coming to D.C. Smithsonian's National Zoo from China. The pair of pandas are expected in the nation's capital by the end of 2024. The National Zoo sent their three giant pandas back to China last year, marking the end of an era that began 50 years ago and saw millions fall in love with the adorable and captivating bears. That was from Fox 5 DC. Story from Roll Call this week. In the rush toward recess last week, the Senate moved to correct an oversight that many Americans might not even be aware of when lawmakers passed a bill to designate the bald eagle as the national bird. Since it was engraved on the Great Seal of the United States in 1782, the eagle has been universally assumed to be the country's national bird, just as the Baltimore Oriole is the state bird in Maryland, and the robin is so named in Connecticut, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The Senate bill from Minnesota Democrat Amy Klobuchar and Wyoming Republican Cynthia Lummis passed by unanimous consent on July 29th. That was the article from Roll Call. There's a companion bill sponsored by Congressman Brad Finstad, Republican from Minnesota. Congressman Finstad spoke about his bill in a video that he posted in June.
Did you know that the bald eagle is not our nation's national bird? Since 1782, the bald eagle has been a symbol of America featured on the Great Seal. However, it has not been designated as our national bird. It remains a symbol of strength and freedom across this country, as it is prominently displayed throughout all of the branches of our military and serves as a logo, trademark, and brand icon for businesses, nonprofits, and sports teams across this country. It's also represented on stamps, coins, currency, and holds spiritual value for our tribal communities. Last month, I introduced legislation that rightfully designates the bald eagle as the national bird. This is bipartisan, it's bicameral, and it's great legislation that gives the bald eagle the long overdue recognition it deserves. Throughout this process, I've had the pleasure of working with the National Eagle Center in Wabasha, Minnesota. The National Eagle Center provides people with a unique experience to learn about eagles and their connection to cultures and history. I was proud to work with them on this legislation. I appreciate all that they do to preserve the bald eagle.
Congressman Brad Finstad, Republican from Minnesota, posting that video in June. The U.S. Senate passed a bill last week to designate the bald eagle as the official U.S. bird, and the House could take it up when Congress returns from the summer recess in September. President Joe Biden welcomed the 2023 World Series champion Texas Rangers to the White House today. The Rangers defeated the Arizona Diamondbacks in 5 games last November.
You never gave up. You never gave up. And you kept the faith. And like your favorite band, Creed, you took each other higher and higher. You really did. But let me close with this. Along with being champions of the world, you're the first and foremost champions in your community. The support you give the community, I mean it sincerely, it matters. It matters a lot. Local schools, feeding and educating children, it matters. Cultural centers, celebrating Latino history and Latino culture, which everybody ought to start learning more about. Well, like parenthetically, you know that 28 out of every high school student is Latino. We better start figuring it out. And the health and well-being of our nation's veterans, military families, and first responders. What you do matters, because that's America at its best. So congratulations to the world champion Texas Rangers, and good luck for the rest of the season, man. I'm not going to turn this over.
President Joe Biden at the White House with the 2023 Major League Baseball World Series champions, Texas Rangers. Associated Press article previewing today's event says the visit will bring about a rare public appearance for President Biden, who has hardly been seen since his July 21st announcement that he was dropping his bid for re-election and endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the Democratic ticket in November's presidential election. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Subscribe to C-SPAN's free evening newsletter, Word for Word, and you'll get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.